Aircraft limitations. This section is a consolidated list of the basic limitations applying to operation of the S-64 Echo. It follows the basic outline of Section 1 of the Flight Manual with miscellaneous additions. Type of operations. Three mode categorizations are utilized to set forth the basis for the required performance and subsequent operation of the S-64 Echo helicopter. Mode 1 represents the operations without an external load where the maximum gross weight must not exceed the values set out in Figure 1-1 of the flight manual. Weights are based on ability to hover on one engine out of a ground effect using 30-minute single-engine power. Mode 1 operations require a minimum takeoff and landing area of 108 by 133 feet. Mode 2 represents the maximum weight for operations with a non-jettisonable load using normal takeoff and landing procedures without height velocity limitation at a weight not to exceed the values found in Figure 1-2. Weights are based on ability to hover on one engine at a 10-foot wheel height using 30-minute single power. Mode 2 operations require a minimum takeoff and landing area of 108 by 500 feet. Mode 3 represents operations with a jettisonable Class B external load. Weights are based on ability to hover OGE with two engines operating at takeoff power. The maximum weight must not exceed the values found in Figure 1-3, and the external load must be jettisonable to one of the following maximum weights. Operations of a crane-type helicopter as a vehicle to transport cargo and equipment, including carrying of rotorcraft external load combinations and crew members necessary to the crane operation are as follows. Rotorcraft external load operations, hardpoints, Class A and B, single point or hoist, Class B. Note, Class A, an external load that cannot move freely, cannot jettison, and does not extend below the landing gear. Class B, an external load that can be jettisoned and is lifted free of land or water during the rotorcraft operation. Aircraft limited to day or night visual flight rules. VFR. Operating limitations. Weight limits. The maximum takeoff and landing weight for the rotorcraft load combination is 42,000 pounds. This is the airframe limit and has nothing to do with the engine power or torque limits. Pilot must refer to appropriate planning charts for weight limitations under any given set of combinations. There are several different ways for the aircraft to carry loads. The S-64 Echo is authorized to carry Class A, B, and C loads. Empty weight excludes weight of crew, payload, and fuel, but does not include weight of fixed ballast, unusable fuel, undrainable oil, and a total quantity of hydraulic fluid. The helicopter is to be operated in accordance with loading schedule of the flight manual. Hardpoints. There are 32 hardpoints along aircraft fuselage. Loads may be attached to these hardpoints. See RFM for specifics. Single point hoist. Maximum operational load 15,000 pounds. Maximum static load 20,000 pounds. Single point fixed pendant. Maximum static load 20,000 pounds. Baggage compartments. Station 112 through Station 136. Maximum allowable floor loading is 300 pounds per square foot with a total allowable weight of 250 pounds in each compartment. Center of gravity limitations. The datum is located 336 inches forward of the centerline of the main rotor centroid. The center of gravity limits for the rotorcraft external load combination and for basic rotorcraft are shown in Figure 1-4 of the RFM. Station plus 328 to plus 346 at 38,000 pounds to 42,000 pounds. Station plus 328 to plus 353 at 38,000 pounds. Station plus 324 to plus 353 at 30,000 pounds, and station plus 328 to plus 353 at 23,000 pounds. Loads must be evenly distributed about the lateral axis of the helicopter and must be attached to both sides of the helicopter except for single-point hoist. Engine power limits. Refer to Table 1-1 in the flight manual for detailed information. The basics are N1 104.2%, N2 105.5%, T5 688 degrees Celsius maximum, 655 degrees Celsius continuous, and 525 degrees Celsius start limit. Oil pressure 45 psi to 55 psi normal, 40 psi minimum for flight, 20 psi minimum for ground idle, and 55 psi maximum. Oil temperature 40 degrees Celsius minimum, 120 degrees Celsius maximum. Transmission limits. Refer to Table 1-2 in the flight manual. The basic limits are 30-minute limit dual engine, torque 68.8%, continuous limit dual engine torque 56.3%, 30-minute limit single engine torque 84.4%, single engine torque may go to 97% for up to 1 minute. Oil pressure 40 psi minimum, 120 psi maximum. Normal range is 50 to 65 psi. Oil temperature negative 15 degrees Celsius minimum, 140 degrees Celsius maximum. Normal is 40 to 130 degrees Celsius. Precautionary is 115 to 140 degrees Celsius. Fuel JP1, JP4, JP5, or JP8 fuel conforming to FAA approved Pratt & Whitney Service Bulletin 2016 latest revision is approved. Maximum water contamination of fuel 30 parts per million. Maximum pressure refueling is 240 gallons per minute at a nozzle pressure of 60 psi. Rotor limits. Power off 89% to 110% NR. Power on 100% to 104% NR. Note, rotor creep to 86% NR is permitted for one engine in operative conditions, from 0 to 30 KIAS for Mode 3 to Mode 1 transition, and for one engine in operative landings. Altitude limits. Takeoff gross weight is 39,000 pounds and less for takeoff, en route, and landing. Sea level to 10,000 feet density altitude. Takeoff gross weight 42,000 pounds, takeoff, en route, and landing. Sea level to 7,650 feet density altitude. Linear interpolation permitted between 39,000 pounds and 42,000 pounds. Minimum crews, one pilot and one co-pilot are required. If the aft-facing seat is to be used, one additional helicopter qualified crew member is required for that position. However, in lieu of an additional crew member, the co-pilot may leave his or her seat and operate the auxiliary station under the following conditions. Operations are conducted in a non-congested are where such factors as traffic control, communications, collision, and terrain avoidance, and the protection of persons or property on the ground do not require his or her presence in the cockpit. The co-pilot may occupy the auxiliary station only within the proximity of the immediate working area and may perform the change of station only while on the ground in a hover or during stabilized level flight within that area. Such change of station will be initiated only at the discretion of the pilot in command. Flight limits. The pilot must maintain physical control of the cyclic stick when the stick trim is in the off position. No aerobatic maneuvers approved. Never exceed speed VNE is 115 knots indicated airspeed, with zero instrument error. For variations of VNE with altitude and takeoff gross weights, refer to Figure 1-5 of the RFM. Rearward flight restricted to 20 knots, calibrated airspeed, CAS, and sideward flight to 30 knots. Instrument flight is prohibited. When operating over congested areas, the helicopter must be operated at an altitude and over routes which provide suitable landing areas that can be reached in no more than 5 minutes. Warning: Loss of control may result if landing not performed within 5 minutes following an in-flight engine fire. Avoid prolonged hover in crosswind or tailwind to prevent accumulation of exhaust fumes in the cockpit or cabin. One boost pump for each engine is required at all times when the engines are operating unless the cross-feed system is used. Cross-feed system to be used only during cruise flight or emergency conditions. Refer to Minimum Equipment List (MEL) for further restrictions. Hovering turns of less than 15 seconds for 360 degrees are prohibited. Flight into icy conditions prohibited. Maximum landing roll-on speed 30 knots ground speed. Automatic Flight Control System (AFIS) limitations. AFIS to be disengaged during ground taxiing. Aircraft limited to 30 degrees of bank when AFIS is engaged. Bar alt channel is limited to cruise flight only. The pilot must have his hand on the cyclic control and feet on or near the pedal controls at all times when the AFIS is engaged. Do not engage the AFIS unless pilot's vertical gyro indicator displays correct attitude and orientation. Auxiliary remote stick not to be engaged without pilot's permission. AFIS must be engaged during all remote hover stick operations. If retractable tail skid is installed, the tail skid must be in the down position at all times, and retracted only when interference is expected during loading and unloading. Nose wheel lock to be used for parking only. APP restricted to ground use only. AFIS servo on at all times except during an emergency. Do not taxi or fly aircraft with landing gear kneeled, if installed. The aft-facing pilot's seat, provided the position controls are disengaged, and if installed, the collective guard in place, and the two observer seats may be occupied. External load operations, the following apply. No certificate holder may allow a person to be carried during rotorcraft external load operations unless that person is a flight crew member, is a flight crew member trainee, performs an essential function in connection with the external load operation, or is necessary to accomplish the work activity directly associated with the operation. Auxiliary station limitations. The helicopter will be flown from the auxiliary station only in conjunction with the use of the single-point hoist, single-point pendant, even though the auxiliary control station operator, hereafter referred to as aft pilot, is controlling the aircraft during that time. The forward-facing pilot is to remain in command at all times, and with the responsibility associated with this command authority. Will monitor the controls at all times, hands on cyclic and collective controls, and feet on the pedals, including the period when the aft pilot is flying. The forward-facing pilot will have final control at all times and is responsible for taking any corrective actions required as a result of AFIS or engine malfunction. The aft pilot is to assume control of the aircraft only at the command of the pilot. Refer to Section 2, Normal Procedures, and RFM. When the hoist hook is being attached to the load and the aircraft is being controlled from the auxiliary station, the aircraft is to be hovered at a height that is sufficient to preclude the main landing gear wheels from straddling the load. The aft pilot will control the aircraft while the load is being attached and while lifting the load clear of the ground and obstacles. Aft pilot will also control the aircraft to lower the load into its final set location and release the hook. Aft pilot may increase or decrease single point hoist cable length at weights at or below 15,000 pounds, but the load must not be raised between the landing gear. The helicopter weight must not exceed maximum Mode 1 limits after release of an external load. The normal transfer of aircraft control between pilot and aft pilot will be accomplished with standard voice communication. Refer to Section 2, Normal Procedures in the RFM. All auxiliary station operations are to be conducted with cyclic and directional control channels for the AFIS engaged, the stick trim on, and the normal mode and/or aux mode on the remote control stick engaged. The bar alt channel is not to be engaged. The aft pilot is to observe the following limitations: maximum sideward flight of 20 knots, maximum rearward flight of 20 knots, maximum forward flight of 20 knots, maximum crosswind limitation 20 knots. Do not start more than one engine with rotor brake engaged. Do not stop rotors with the rotor brake except when one engine is at ground idle, the under engine is shut down, and the NR is between 30 to 40%. External loads cannot be attached directly to the single-point fixed pendant. Additional rigging devices must be provided so that external load is below the landing gear. Flight into ambient temperatures of -35°C or below is prohibited when the flight control hydraulic system has optional 3-micron filters installed. Operations must be conducted so that aircraft does not fly in or make contact with visible rotor spray or rotor wash in salt water or brackish conditions. Cargo pod assembly, if installed. It is not permissible to carry items which can significantly contribute to propagation of fire in the cargo pod. Do not carry more than 450 pounds of equipment in the cargo pod. There is no change to the aircraft gross weight limitations as a result of cargo pod installation. Instrument limitations. General. Red radial lines, maximum and minimum limits. Yellow arcs, precautionary range. Green arcs, normal operating range. Airspeed indicator. Maximum 115 knots IAS, red radial line. Normal operating range 30 to 99 knots IAS, green arc. Precautionary range 0 to 30 knots IAS and 99 to 115 knots IAS, yellow arc. Triple tachometer. Engine power turbine speed N2. Maximum 105.5%, red radial line. Precautionary 90% to 100%, yellow arc. Normal operating range 100% to 104%, green arc. Rotor speed NR. Maximum 110%, red radial line. Minimum 86%, red radial line. Normal operating range 100% to 104%, green arc. Power turbine inlet temperature indicator T5. Maximum 688 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Precautionary 655 degrees Celsius to 688 degrees Celsius, yellow arc. Normal operating range 515 degrees Celsius to 655 degrees Celsius, green arc. Note: an exceedance of 609 degrees Celsius will activate a caution segment light on the master caution panel marked number 1 T5 or number 2 T5 when the Amitech T5 indicator installed. Gas generator tachometer N1. Maximum 104% N1, red radial line. Normal operating range 37% to 104% N1, green arc. Torque meter. Maximum 84.4% single engine, red radial line. Maximum 68.8% dual engine, red radial line. Normal operating range 0% to 56.3%, green arc. Engine oil temperature indicator. Maximum 120 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Normal operating range 40 degrees Celsius to 120 degrees Celsius, green arc. Engine oil pressure indicator. Maximum 55 psi, red radial line. Normal operating range 45 to 55 psi, green arc. Precautionary range 40 to 45 psi, yellow arc. Minimum 40 psi for flight, red radial line. Note: 20 psi minimum for ground idle. Caution: when temperature reaches 115 degrees Celsius, cease heavy lift operations and closely monitor transmission oil temperature. If temperature continues to rise, land as soon as possible. Transmission oil temperature indicator. Maximum 140 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Precautionary range 115 degrees Celsius to 140 degrees Celsius, yellow arc. Normal operating range 40 degrees Celsius to 115 degrees Celsius, green arc. Minimum -15 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Note: the main transmission oil temperature indicator is connected to an oil temperature bulb adjacent to the main transmission oil outlet port. Temperature oil pressure indicator. Maximum 120 psi, red radial line. Normal operating range 50 to 65 psi, green arc. Minimum 40 psi, red radial line. First stage servo pressure indicator. Maximum 3,300 psi, red radial line. Normal operating range 2,600 to 3,300 psi, green arc. Minimum 2,600 psi, red radial line. Second stage servo pressure indicator. Maximum 2,300 psi, red radial line. Normal operating range 1,700 to 2,300 psi, green arc. Minimum 1,700 psi, red radial line. Utility servo pressure indicator. Maximum 1,700 psi, red radial line. Normal operating range 1,300 to 1,700 psi, green arc. Minimum 1,300 psi, red radial line. Hoist oil temperature indicator. Maximum 121 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Precautionary range 107 degrees Celsius to 120 degrees Celsius, yellow arc. Normal operating range 0 degrees Celsius to 107 degrees Celsius, green arc. Auxiliary hydraulic temperature indicator, if installed. Maximum 120 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Normal range 40 degrees Celsius to 120 degrees Celsius, green arc. Minimum 40 degrees Celsius, red radial line. Miscellaneous limitations. APP clutch engagement limit 4 seconds. Abort start if delay is longer. Normal clutch engagement is 76 to 80% and for new units as high as 90%. APP limits. Overspeed 110%. Exhaust temperature 1090 degrees Fahrenheit. Engine ignition use limitations. 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 2 minutes on, 23 minutes off. And engine start limits. Start switch press 3 seconds and release. Check for indication of oil pressure, no fuel flow, and N1 5% before turning ignition on. At or above 12% N1 lever to ground position. Light off within 20 seconds or abort start. 40 to 44% N1 for engine idle speed. See supplement SH5764 NM in flight manual. Starter releases at 29 plus or minus 3% N1, T5 max of 525 degrees Celsius. Engine oil pressure minimum of 20 psi. If a light off is not obtained within 20 seconds after the advancement of N1 lever, or if the starter becomes disengaged, initiate engine shutdown procedure. Stick jump test with APHIS engaged and collective 2 inches up. Press APHIS momentary switch on cyclic or center console and look for the following. No more than 5/8 inches jump on collective and 1/8 inches jump on the cyclic and 1/16 jump on the pedals. Refueling bugs set at 2,800 pounds max.